Look, here's the thing. Most of you are running a race where the finish line keeps moving because you don't actually know where it is. You've been told to save forever by people who get paid a percentage of how much you hoard. But the math is screaming at us that there is a specific mathematical tipping point where your money starts working harder than you ever could. It's called the coasting point, and if you miss it, you're just working for the sake of working, which is a total shell game. You're trading your life force for digits on a screen that you won't even need by the time you're allowed to touch them. My name is Zack, and I spend way too much time thinking about compound interest curves and the 2026 tax erosion. If you're someone who is tired of the grind until you die mantra and wants to know exactly when you can take your foot off the gas and actually start breathing, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Let's look at the 2026 reality. We are sitting in an economy where the median home price is $432,450, and the IRS has just adjusted the tax brackets again. If you are blindly throwing money into a 401k without a stop loss for your labor, you are being financially inefficient. The psychology of money tells us about loss aversion. We are so scared of running out of money that we overaccumulate, wasting our healthiest years earning dollars we will never have the energy to spend. It's a tragedy of miscalculation. We've been conditioned to think that more is always better, but in the world of physics and finance, there is such a thing as escape velocity. Once you hit it, gravity doesn't pull you back down anymore. Now, you might be thinking this doesn't apply to you because you started late or you don't have $1 million yet. But let me show you why that's a dangerous lie. You don't need $1 million to stop investing. You just need critical mass. Most financial advisors won't tell you this because their business model depends on you being a perpetual accumulator. They want you focused on the number at age 65, but they never talk about the velocity at age 40. Here is the first bombshell. There's a point where adding more money to your investments is mathematically irrelevant. Let's look at the numbers. If you have $500,000 invested and it grows by 10% in a decent market year, that's $50,000 in gains. If you are killing yourself working overtime and skipping vacations to contribute another $1,452.30 a month, you're only adding about $17,427 a year. Your labor is contributing less than a third of what the money is doing on its own. You are essentially a side hustle to your own brokerage account. The heavy lifting is already being done by the ghost in the machine. At that point, your extra labor is a rounding error. You're working for the bank's management fees and the tax man, not for your own freedom. Let's use specific real-world dollar figures for the 2026 landscape. Let's say you're 35 years old and you want to retire at 65. If you have managed to scrape together $187,420 in a diversified portfolio today, and you never add another cent, not one single penny, at an 8% average annual return, that money grows to over $1.89 million by the time you hit 65. In 2026 dollars, adjusted for a 3% inflation crawl, that still gives you the purchasing power of nearly $780,000 today. You're done. You have coasted. You can spend 100% of your paycheck today on living life. Taking the kids to Disney, you're upgrading your quality of life because the future you is already taken care of by the math. The bridge is built. You don't need to keep laying bricks. But why do we keep pushing? It's lifestyle creep and the fear-mongering of the financial industry. They want you to keep assets under their management so they can clip their 1.25% fee. They don't want you to know that you've already won the game because winners don't pay fees. If you continue to grind at a job you hate just to add a few more dollars to a pile that is already growing itself, you are suffering from a psychological disorder called one more year syndrome. It's the belief that safety is always one more paycheck away. It's a lie. Safety is a mathematical state, not an emotional one. Here is the second bombshell. Saving too much is a form of poverty. If you are 40 years old, living like a monk and hoarding cash while your kids are growing up and your knees still work, you are trading the only non-renewable asset you have, time, for a digital currency that is being debased by the central bank as we speak. You're rich on paper and poor in experience. That is a bad trade every single time. By the time you're 70 and have $5 million, you won't have the health to spend it the way you could have spent $50,000 at age 40. You're trading high-quality time for low-quality money. The math of the 4% rule in 2026 is tricky because of higher healthcare costs, but the principle remains. Once your invested assets are roughly 25 times your annual expenses, you are financially independent. But the coasting point happens much earlier, usually when your assets are about 5 to 7 times your annual expenses, depending on your age and how many years you have left for the compound interest to cook. If you're 30 and you have $100,000, you are statistically likely to be a multi-millionaire without ever saving another dime. Let's look at the direct confrontation. You'll say, Zack, what about a market crash? What if the S&P 500 does nothing for a decade? Look, if the market drops 30%, that $1,452 monthly contribution isn't going to save you. What saves you is the time horizon. In 2026, the volatility is high, but the long-term trajectory of productive assets, companies that actually make things and provide services, is the only hedge we have against a dying dollar. If the world economy collapses to the point where compound interest stops working for 30 years, your 401k balance is the least of your worries. You'll be trading canned goods and ammunition. Betting against the math of compounding is betting against human ingenuity, and that's a losing bet over a 30-year span. Here is the third bombshell. The most dangerous period for your portfolio isn't the year you retire, it's the 10 years before you retire. This is called sequence of returns risk. If you keep grinding and contributing during a market peak just because you're supposed to, you're just buying expensive units to have a higher probability of retreating. If you hit your coast point early, you can pivot your income into memory dividends, spending money on experiences now that pay off in psychological well-being for the rest of your life. $1 you spend on a meaningful experience at age 40 pays a happiness dividend every time you remember it for the next 40 years. $1 saved at 40 just sits there. The system is designed to keep you on the treadmill. It wants you to see the $5 coffee as a sin and the 60-hour work week as a virtue. I'm telling you the opposite. The math says that once the snowball is big enough, it doesn't need you to push it anymore. It will grow simply by the gravity of compound interest. In fact, your pushing might actually get in the way of the momentum. If you have $250,000 at age 40 and you plan to retire at 65, you are probably done. You can quit the high-stress management job that's giving you gray hair and ulcers, take the lower-paying role at the bookstore, the golf course, or the nonprofit that you actually enjoy, and let the markets do the heavy lifting. You can stop saving and start living. Most people are terrified of this because their entire identity is wrapped up in the struggle. They don't know who they are without the stress of the grind. Without the struggle, the shell game is over, and they have to face the reality of their own freedom. We need to talk about the tax dragon of 2026. With the way government spending is going, your future withdrawals are going to be a target. This is why hitting your coast point early is vital. It gives you the flexibility to move money into tax-advantaged buckets or Roth conversions while you're not in a high-income bracket from your grind job. If you keep working and earning high, you stay in a high bracket, and the IRS takes a bigger bite of the very money you're killing yourself to save. It's a hamster wheel designed by bureaucrats. You've seen the numbers. You know the standard advice is based on fear, not formulas. The industry wants you scared, so you keep paying. The government wants you working, so you keep paying. But the math is your exit ramp. Now the question is, are you brave enough to trust the equations and actually start living? Are you going to be the person who dies with $5 million in the bank, but a life full of I wish I had? Or are you going to be the person who recognized the tipping point, looked the system in the eye, and stepped off the treadmill while you still had the legs to walk and the eyes to see the world? You have the permission you were looking for. The math gave it to you. Don't wait until you're too old to enjoy the freedom you've already bought. If you want to see the exact breakdown of how to calculate your specific coast number using the 2026 inflation adjustments, the current market yields, and the hidden tax implications of 2026, you need to watch this next video right here. I'll show you the spreadsheet that the forever savers and the big banks don't want you to see. I'll see you there.